Welcome back to Walk Through the Bible with me in a year, week 6. We're starting in Genesis chapters 20 through 23, and it's a very similar story to what we heard in week 4, where Abraham and Sarah, they're traveling. They travel to a different city this time. It's called Gerar, and when they get there, Abraham is fearing for his life again because Sarah's so beautiful, and he's scared that people are going to kill him, and so they run into King Abe. I'll put his name below, and I can't pronounce it. And he thinks Sarah's beautiful, so they take him back to her place. And then God reveals to King Abe in a dream that she's married and her husband's a prophet, and you need to take her back or you're going to die. And King Abe was like, hold on just a minute. Like, I didn't touch her. First of all, I'm innocent. And they told me that that's her sister. So he goes back, he takes Sarah back, and he's like, why did you lie? And again, Abraham was like, well, I was scared for my life, but she is my half sister. So I just want to say right there, like, they were half brother and sisters, and back then that was normal because a lot of times you did marry your half sister to preserve like your property, your bloodline, your inheritance, things like that. So it wasn't uncommon, and incest, which I know I can't wrap my head around this, but incest wasn't banned in the Bible to 500 or 600 years after Abraham. So when King Abe brought Sarah back, he had Abraham pray over him, and then he gave them gifts. He gave them cattle, money, servants, the whole nine, because he's like for sure want to clear his name. Like, I just want to make sure I'm good. Then in chapter 21, Sarah at the age of 90 has her one and only son, Isaac. And Isaac means laughter because she's laughing that she had a son so late in life. Fast forward a little bit, and she overhears Ishmael, which was Abraham's son with the servant Hagar, kind of mocking Isaac. So she goes to Abraham and is like, they got to go. And so Abraham sends Hagar and Ishmael packing, sends them to the desert with supplies, and God reassures that Ishmael will be a great nation as well. So when they get to the desert, they run out of supplies, and Ishmael's crying, and he hears Ishmael's cry, and he provides a well for them, and he promises to make him a great nation. In chapter 22, God tests Abraham to reveal his faith and his character. So he tells him he wants to take Isaac up on the mountain and sacrifice him. So what does Abraham do? He gets his son, he takes him on top of the mountain, he builds the altar, and he's about to stab him, and an angel of the Lord interferes and is like, whoa, stop. The angel of the Lord is like, we know you fear God. Here's a ram to sacrifice instead. And then in chapter 23, Sarah dies, and Abraham purchases a cave to bury her in. Now we go to Romans chapters 11 and 12, and this is just tying in God's plan for salvation is for everyone. His mercy started with the Jews, and then it spread to everyone. And how faith isn't just about believing in stuff, it's also a total makeover on the inside. Like being humble, serving others, and having a real love for people that mirrors God. So we finished the book of Joshua last week, so one book down. And it ended with Joshua calling all the tribes together in the promised land and telling them that they need to obey the Torah, listen to God, follow God, all that. And then Joshua dies. So now we are in the book of Judges, and it starts where Joshua dies. And it shows the failures that Israel had as a nation. And the word judges is not like a courtroom judges like we think about. The word judges here is like a political or a military leader in the tribe. So in chapter 1, it's talking about how Israel had failed to run out all the Canaanites. So in Joshua, we did learn about some of the cities that the Israel had conquered, but there's still a lot of land around that they haven't conquered, and a lot of Canaanites still living in that land. And I want you to remember the reason they're driving out the Canaanites is because the Canaanites are corrupt people, and they sacrifice babies and that kind of stuff, and God called Israel to be holy people. So instead of the Israelites moving in and kind of converting the Canaanites and being a holy person, eventually the Israelites just start living like the Canaanites. They start worshiping, they start acting like them. They would sin against God. And so then there was just like a cycle happening. So they would sin against God, and then they would be oppressed. And then the Israelites would see the error of their ways, and they would raise up one of the judges, which is one of the leaders of their tribe, to help deliver and bring them peace. And they would get the peace, and then Israel would get comfortable, and then they would sin again, and then they would be oppressed again. And it's just like a cycle over and over and over. Then we go to Psalms chapters 15 through 17, and these are the Psalms of David. And he's basically just saying, if you have integrity, that is going to draw you closer to God. And if you have faith that God's going to deliver you, that's going to triumph any mess or challenge that you come across, because God is your ultimate defender. Now we go to Job chapters 11 and 12. I'm about tired of hearing about Job's friends. So we're here from the third final friend today, Zophar. And he's basically saying the same thing the other two friends are saying. But he comes in a little bit harsher, and he's like, you're babbling nonsense. He basically says Job has a secret sin. And Job responds sarcastically, and he's like, you know what? Y'all are all so smart. The world would be clueless without you. And he tells them that everything's in God's hands and their comfort is worthless. Now we go to Isaiah chapters 29 through 32. And Isaiah is calling out Jerusalem for fake worship and spiritual blindness. And he's basically accusing Jerusalem for turning to Egypt for military protection instead of trusting God. In chapters 32, the focus kind of shifts to more hopeful, because he's saying a king is going to come and it's going to reign, and a prince is going to bring judgment. So he's kind of prophesying the Messiah, Jesus, coming back. And when that king comes, which is Jesus, it's going to make everything better, and how God is going to pour his spirit out from heaven onto the people. To Matthew chapters 14 through 16. And John the Baptist, which is Jesus's cousin who, baptized Jesus, he gets killed by King Herod. And so Jesus hears this, and he is sad, and he goes to get on a boat and go be by himself. He just wants to be by himself, probably grieve, pray. But word spreads that he's around, so crowds come from all the towns nearby. When Jesus sees them, he doesn't get angry or whatever. He shows compassion for them, for their belief and for coming. So what does he do? He does what Jesus does. He starts healing them. He heals the sick, the lame, the blind, whatever's wrong with him, he's healing them. So the crowd was like 5,000 men. So back then they only counted the men. They didn't count the women and children. So if you add up the women and children, it was probably 10,000 to 15,000 people that was around listening to Jesus. The disciples were like, it's getting late. We got to send these people packing. They got to get back to their house. And Jesus was like, but we ain't fed them first. So then he takes 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, and he holds it up to heaven, and he blesses it, and he multiplies it. And it's enough to feed the 10,000 to 15,000 people that was there. And they had 12 baskets of food left over after everybody was done eating. I always thought that was kind of ironic, because there's 12 disciples. So I wonder if he did that on purpose so each disciple could get a basket. I don't know. Then Jesus wants some alone time that he didn't get. So he sends his disciples on the boat, and he's like, y'all go ahead and go to the next town, and I'll catch up with you. And a storm comes, and it's tossing the boat crazy. So Jesus starts walking out on the water to them, and the disciples see him, and they get scared. And Jesus is like, don't be afraid. And Peter's like, is that you, Lord? If that's you, tell me to come. And so Jesus was like, come on. So Peter steps out in the water, and he starts walking to God. Then he gets scared, and then he starts sinking. He's like, save me. So Jesus reaches down and saves him. Then Jesus runs into the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which is the religious leaders. And they're like, if you are who you say you are, show us a sign from heaven. And Jesus was like, y'all are wicked and an adulterous nation looking for a sign. Then Jesus asked his disciples, who am I? And Simon, at the time, he's like, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus was like, that could only be revealed to you from my heavenly Father. So right then and there, he changed Simon's name to Peter, which means on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell cannot overcome it. Then Jesus says, to follow him, you must deny yourself. Well, we're out of time. See you in week 6.